there are all these different things to choose from. Some people like to build equipment, some people like just to talk. You can pick and choose because there's so many different dimensions or aspects of ham radio. One of them, which some people use, but you don't have to use, is a system called Winlink. And I'm one of the Winlink developers, so I've spent a great deal of time working on this. What Winlink is a method for sending and receiving email over radio. And you can send an email to your friend on Gmail or Yahoo. You can receive emails back. You can send it to other hams. So what it is a radio email network. So it's a worldwide system. And when I say worldwide, I'm not exaggerating. I don't believe there's any place on the face of the earth that you, using a 100-watt HF radio and a decent antenna, cannot send and receive email with Winlink. It could be the jungle of Africa, it could be North Pole, South Pole, you name it. If you've got an antenna, 100-watt radio, very likely you can send and receive email with Winlink. That includes the middle of the ocean, which is why Winlink is very popular with many, 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 many sailors who use it every day to communicate with shore, with family, and to get weather information, order parts, and other things like that. So it's very popular with sailors, but it's also becoming increasingly important for emergency communications. When you have a hurricane like Katrina or earthquake like Haiti, that knocks out the local infrastructure. The internet's gone, phones are gone, and the question is, how do you get initial communication in while they're trying to restore some sort of other official, standard communication? And the answer for a lot of people is Winlink, which is why it's been adopted for contingency communication by many government agencies, both at the county, state, and federal level. It's used a lot in Tennessee. In fact, in this building, there is a Winlink station that's on the air all the time that is receiving and relaying messages from other stations around the country. It's on the air right now. There's an antenna on top of the building. At the county level or the state level, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency has a Winlink station that's on the air right now. It's on the air 24/7. Federal level, there's an organization called SHARES, S-H-A-R-E-S, that I'm working with a lot, that is a federal high-frequency HF communication network, and they're expanding almost on a daily basis, adding more and more of their own stations. A lot of these people do not operate on ham frequencies. They have federal frequencies that are outside the ham bands they use, and they don't have the kind of restrictions on non-encryption and stuff like that we have. And they have many more. The feds have more frequencies than hams do. That's just the way it is. So they got a lot more frequencies to work in. So they stay away from the ham bands and do their own stuff. But it's the same system that you can use on the ham bands. So it's also used by a lot of infrastructure critical non-government organizations, including Red Cross, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, AT&T. I think has 66 Winlink stations. The National Guard uses it. In Tennessee, the National Guard has 15 of these go boxes, Winlink go boxes, scattered around the state. They can deploy very quickly for emergencies. So it's a big system for emergency relief. It's got different operating modes, and I'm going to break this down as we go, but it's sort of as a background here. There is what I will call the conventional system, which is what most people use, which stores messages on background servers. And I've got a picture coming up which will explain this better. But basically a message comes in to a radio station which sends it up through the internet to a background station where it's stored. Now, because that uses an internet connection from the radio connection to the central server, it is dependent on the internet being operational. It doesn't mean a particular internet from one station, but the internet in general has to be used. There's also something called a hybrid network, which functions completely without the internet of any shape, form. I mean, it can operate if the entire worldwide internet's down. It can still get messages around the country or around the world. And finally, there's a peer-to-peer system where two Winlink users can directly communicate, like simplex, basically, where you're going back and forth between two users located on the ground. Okay, this is the conventional system. And we'll start here at the bottom and work up. This is you. It says client, that's you. So you're down here, you've got a computer running the Winlink software, you've got a radio, of course, and you've got some sort of antenna. And you do this both with HF radio and also VHF, UHF packet radios. So you've got different choices. In the case of HF, of course, you've got enormous range. I routinely connect to stations all over the country and into Canada. Canada. So you've got your computer, you've got your radio and antenna, and you make a radio connection to one of these remote message servers or radio message servers, or always called RMSs. And what this is a automatically operating station. Usually doesn't have an operator sitting there at the radio. They normally operate 24/7, and they consist of a computer, a radio, and an antenna. And that's what we've got in this building, is an RMS, Winlink RMS. So you, wherever you may be, in the case of HF, you might be in New York or Florida, can connect to the RMS here in Tennessee using HF radio, no problem. And when you do that, you may establish a link here, which is sending packets back and forth from your radio and your computer to the RMS radio and computer, which is, again, operating automatically. It's a radio link. The RMS makes an internet connection to one of the common message servers, or CMS. This is the backbone of the system. There are 5 CMS servers. There are, we have one of the CMSs here in Brentwood. It's actually hosted by the Brentwood Administration Building, downtown Brentwood. That would be southeast. There's one in San Diego, in Brentwood, and Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Wine, Austria, and in Perth, Australia. So they're scattered around the world for reliability. The CMSs are mirror images of each other. They automatically update each other. So when you connect to one of the RMSs, it randomly selects, or on a rotating basis, a CMS to connect to. So the first time you connect, you may go to San Diego. If you connect again, you may go to Brentwood. Connect again, you may go to Halifax. So it rotates around, but whichever one you go to, when you send a message into it, almost within seconds, this CMS notifies the other CMSs that the message has been received and sends a copy of the message to them. So within a very short period of time, let's say less than a minute, any message you send in is replicated on all 5 CMSs. So they're mirror images, automatically communicating and synchronizing with each other. And what that means is that if one or more CMSs goes down, it has no impact on the system. Because if the RMS attempts to connect this one, it's down, it will automatically switch over and connect to this one. If it's down too, it'll connect to this one until it finally finds one that's operational. The entire system can operate fine with only one CMS on the air. And you won't even know that the other's 4 down. Rarely have we had more than 1 down at the same time. I mean, very rare. And the uptime of the system in general has been like 0.999, maybe even another 9% over the last 10 years. It's extraordinarily reliable because of the redundancy of the CMSs. There are hundreds of RMSs around the world. There are 5 CMSs, but there are hundreds of RMSs all over the world. We've got RMSs, well, here in this building. We've got them in South America. We've got them all over Europe. We've got them in India, Russia, China, Australia. They're everywhere. And when you're making connection, it doesn't matter which RMS you connect to. If you happen to be sitting here in Brentwood and connect to one in Franklin, fine. If you connect to one in Canada, fine. If you connect to one in Spain, that's fine. Whichever one you connect to is going to make an internet connection to one of the CMSs. So you just choose an RMS that's within good radio range of wherever you are and connect to it. And don't worry about which CMS it's going to use, because it's going to pick a CMS and get it to it. Yeah.
Who, not only RMS, who funds all that?
It's volunteers. Well, a lot of them are run by agencies. Like Williamson County pays for this one, equipment and operation. But many of them are just run by ordinary hams who just do it because it's ham activities, just a service to the community. I'd say probably the majority of them are, certainly out of the United States, the majority of them are run by just ordinary hams who just dedicate their time, volunteer their time and their money to set it up and run it.
So what's the link, so you get the remote message servers,
I'm sorry?
you had the RMS.
Yes.
Goes up to the internet, which is a backbone like an AT&T or.
Well, it goes through any internet connection. I mean, it could be Comcast, could be whatever you got, to just whatever internet connection you have to one of the CMSs. So this is just a common, ordinary internet connection, nothing special. If you had one at home, you'd use Comcast or whatever you might have for internet, AT&T, whatever. So nothing special there.
Who funds the CMSs?
Again, the people, different groups fund it. The one in Canada, well, the Winlink team, we get donations, so we have some money, and usually one of the CMS needs to be replaced. That's funded out of Winlink Common Funds. We have an account with donations. We don't fund the software. I mean the client software, the RMS, but the CMS level, yeah, that's funded out of the donation money we get. Yeah.
This is fascinating.
And in fact, one of the things, I'm not going to get into the details of this, but we're moving towards shifting these into the Amazon Web Services. You know what that is? It's a big service provided, very, very, very reliable, provided by Amazon, with incredible backup redundancy and power and everything else. So we're trying to shift from the individual CMSs into multiple CMS located on Amazon. Now, in terms of receiving messages, when you pick up your mail, it's exactly the same process. You call in and connect to one of the RMSs, any one of the RMSs in the world. It connects to one of the CMSs and says, this is W4PHS, is there any pending mail? And if any messages are being stored in the database here, for me, W4PHS, it says, yeah, I got them. And then starts sending them down through the internet to the RMS, and then via radio from the RMS to my computer, and I receive my mail. Now, I don't necessarily, and generally do not, connect to the same RMS as the sender, because the messages are up here on the CMSs, not in the RMSs. So I can connect to any RMS, and it can connect to any CMS, and because they are synchronized, I get my mail. Now, one of the nice things about this is the time independence. You can send a message to me, it goes up into a database on a CMS and stored there, and maybe a day or two before I call in to receive my mail. So we don't have to be on the air at the same time, because it's a store and forward system. It's stored in the CMS and then picked up at my convenience when I get around to connecting. There are different types of connections. You can connect by a high frequency, and within the high frequency, there are two different ways to go. For professionals and serious people, there's a wonderful, wonderful protocol called PACTOR, and there are different levels of PACTOR. Unfortunately, PACTOR modems cost $1,500. So the average ham is not going to have one. Agencies buy them by the dozen. Meaning $1,500 for an agency. You know how much some of those little radios that a cop carries on his belt cost? $5,000 to $7,000. Every individual cop walking on the street has $5,000 to $7,000 radio on his belt. Isn't that right? I mean,
well, yeah, it's the high tiers, $5,000.
Yeah. So when you say, well, it's going to cost $1,500, well, shoot, that's nothing out of a budget. So agencies use them. Also, if you can afford a $500,000 or $1 million sailboat, and you're going to risk your life of yourself and your family sailing across the ocean, you can afford a $1,500 motor. So sailors use them very, very much. Now, for ordinary people who don't have $1,500, what can you do? There's a software protocol called WinMore, which I call the poor man's PACTOR, and it's not as good as PACTOR, but it operates darn well. And it only requires an inexpensive sound card device, which costs $100. So for $100, you can use WinMore. It's not as good as PACTOR, but it will absolutely, definitely get the job done. They can also go packet over VHF, UHF in the local area, and you can go 9600 baud or 1200 baud, And depending on the speed, you're talking either $400 or $100 per packet. And there's another mode that just uses the internet. You say, why would you want to do that? Primarily for training, or if you're traveling and want to check your mail, you don't have a radio with you, can do it all through the internet with a telnet connection. This is the sound card device that you'd want to get if you want to do win more. It's called Winlink, and all the ham radio stores sell it. It's a $100 device. And not only is this good for Winmore with Winlink, but the same sound card works perfectly well for all of the other digital modes, like PSK31 or JT65 or all the other modes can operate through Winlink. Now, good news is if you buy a new HF radio, there's a good chance it will have a built-in USB sound card, and you don't even need this. It may be included in the radio you get. So you might want to look for that when you buy an HF radio. I have a Dicom 7600. It has a built-in sound card that works fine, as do many of the other. I think probably the majority of the new HF radios have built-in sound cards, in which case you don't have to even get a signal link. It's just ready to go. Some of the features of Winlink, first is their standard emails, which means they can have file attachments like pictures, PDF files, spreadsheets, just like you'd attach files to regular email. You can attach Winlink messages. There are size limitations because transmitting by a radio is a lot slower than a direct internet connection. So you can't send huge pictures or movies, but you can send small pictures and other things. It automatically compresses and decompresses text messages, spreadsheet, Word files, and so forth. You don't have to worry about doing compression. It's built into the software. And for non-hams, because you can't do encryption of your ham, but for agencies, it's very easy to encrypt files and send them, and which is important. Sometimes you're doing casualty reports, might have names and descriptions of injuries or stuff like that, and they want to do encryption for privacy concerns, or maybe other reasons why they use encryption, but it can be done easily with non-ham users. I mentioned time independence. I don't have to be on the air at the same time as you because it's stored and forward. And you can collect messages while you're unattended and then look at them. Pactor particularly, but also Winmore, can operate QRP, very low levels. Will get the job done. Because you can connect to any RMS, you're not limited by the propagation. If I want to send an email to somebody in Australia, I don't have to be able to connect radio directly to Australia. I just connect to any RMS I could get to, send my message in, and then the person in Australia connects to an RMS in Australia and receives the messages. So since I'm not going radio to radio in conventional mode, I just have to have a link to any RMS, and so does the receiver, rather than going all the way directly.
Is the RMS side of it that's pretty well accessible anywhere?
I'm sorry?
The RMS piece when you connect with your radio?
Because there's so many RMSs.
Yeah, so you mean in the woods, Canada?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're in the Indian Ocean, you connect to one. If you're in Russia, you connect to one. If you're in China, you connect to one. As I said, virtually there's hardly any, I don't know of any place on the face of the earth where you can't connect to some RMS.
There's a huge list of them in the software.
Yeah, it's built in the software as a listable. I mean, which is automatically updated. So it's going to tell you it's going to recommend RMSs which are a good radio rate. You don't have to figure it out on your own.
And I haven't found, at least in the first group, I've never found one that I couldn't hear or hit. You know, if it's being used, that the propagation estimator is pretty good.
It's pretty good. Usually within the top 10, you're going to get one of them.
Where is this list now?
It's built into software. I'm going to run it. I'll show it to you. It's okay. Let's see here. I'm going to say message. Well, a lot of times when you're operating in emergency operation, they require you to send in communication logs of all the traffic you handle, and it can do that automatically. And again, it's widely adopted by emergency communication agencies, so you can send a message here to get your emergency communication or a team or whatever. I'll just go real quickly through this. When you're transmitting and receiving digital, there are different forms of error correction. There may be no error correction at all, like RTTY and ordinary PSK31. There may be what's called forward error correction, which corrects minor errors. And then there's ARQ, automatic repeat request, where it will actually validate and retransmit packets until they finally get through successfully. So it may have to retry several times to get the packet through, but if it ever gets, it will keep doing that until eventually some limit is reached or the packet is guaranteed to be delivered correctly. So there are never any errors in transmitted Winlink messages. You may not be able to transmit, in which case you know that you couldn't get it out. But if it says it's accepted, then bit for bit it will be delivered perfectly at the other end. So there's no corruption that ever creeps in. And this is absolutely essential for emergency communication. If you're requesting a helicopter life flight and you give a latitude and longitude and one digit's messed up in the latitude or longitude, it may go to Kentucky rather than Tennessee. It's got to be, there's no room for error in emergency communication. And that's why the emergency people would never use PSK 31 for communication because there's no error correction. But they do rely on Winlink because it does have the ARQ guaranteed perfect delivery. People say, well, I've got my cell phone, what am I going to do? Well, here's an example of an ice storm that occurred in Kentucky several years ago. I think this is Bill Jorgensen, the Director of Public Safety here in Williamson County. He and David Wolf from TEMA went up there to figure out what was going on and sent back Winlink messages with pictures. This was a picture they sent back by Winlink. This is a cell phone tower. You can see the ice that's covered the dish. Not only does, here's the bad thing. Not only does the ice block the microwave transmission, but guess what? The weight of the ice bends the dish down on its hinges. So even after the ice melted, the dishes weren't pointed at each other. So they didn't get back on the air until teams come out and realigned all the microwave dishes on the towers. That took weeks. So Winlink and amateur radio was all they had during this time.
Well, the man back there in the corner of the room can tell you there can be absolutely nothing wrong with the infrastructure and you can not use your cell phone. I can think of a snowstorm that hit there in the middle of a work day that took you, 6 hours, 7 hours to get from Hermitage home, and the entire route you never got a cell phone.
No, couldn't, but I have my ham radio.
Yeah, there you are. Let's see, this is, I'm going to probably actually run the program. This is the program we've developed. This is the program you actually look at when you're using Winlink. It's called RMS Express, and it's very much like other email programs. It has inboxes and outboxes and messages you sent and so forth. It has a list of messages. It has the actual body of the message, and it's very, if you've used any email program, it's very simple. I'll show it to you, but it usually takes about 10 minutes to get a new person up to speed using RMS Express. It's very simple to use for receiving messages. This is the screen to enter a new message. Okay, there I was sending one to Scott, KD4VDC. I've got a subject, test message from Phil. Scott, this is a test message from Phil. So I just type this in, including who I'm sending it to in the message, and then post it to the outbox. And that's how you can post a message to send. As I said, it's I can teach every one of you to do this in 10 minutes. It's very simple to use. This is a list of channels we mentioned, and it can be sorted by path quality estimate. There's a feature built into the software which automatically, based on your position, the position of the station, and the time of day and the frequency, gives an estimate of which stations you're likely to be able to connect to. Oh, sorry. There you are. I'm not transparent. So you don't have to memorize the stations and the frequency. It's all built in here. You don't have to guess which one is likely to be one you can connect to. It's going to be an estimate which help you figure it out. And this list is automatically updated. So even as new stations come and go, you can find out what it is.
Phil, one thing about that list that may not be obvious is when you start a session to communicate, in this case you chose Pactor.
Yes.
And because of that, the nodes that are listed here have Pactor modems.
That's correct. If I'd chosen Winmore, then I would have gotten stations that can support Winmore. Because not all stations support Pactor, not all stations support Winmore. So the software is smart enough to guide you to where to connect to. And when you look down this list, you say, well, I think I'll try this. When you double click it, it automatically sets this station call sign up and automatically tunes your radio to that frequency. So all you have to do is browse down the list, say, KN6 KB, double click on it, and boom, you're ready to start transmitting. The frequency's already been set in the radio, call sign's already set, so you're ready to go. Just click start. And
So
start
you pick
transmitting.
one or anything on the list and connect.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in range, I mean, if you go
Right.
down to the bottom of the list, find, India and Australia, it might go connect, but you can try it.
Right.
But it's gonna be sorted by order, by likelihood of connecting. Now, so we've been talking about the conventional mode where we go to an RMS and through the internet to a CMS. What if the internet goes out? And this was actually from a speech given October 11th, 2012 by Leon Panetta, who was then Secretary of Defense. And I want you to read this. He said, and this is a direct quote from Secretary of Defense, "The most destructive possibilities," Mr. Panetta said, "involve cyber actors launching several attacks on our critical infrastructure at one time in combination with a physical attack." He described the collective results as a, quote, "cyber Pearl Harbor that would cause physical destruction and the loss of life, and an attack that would paralyze and shock the nation and create a profound new sense of vulnerability." Now, normally people like Secretary of Defense level try to say calming things, and when Secretary of Defense uses terms like cyber Pearl Harbor, it means that he probably is concerned about it also. He knows more than we do, and in fact, only 2 days ago, there was an article in the New York Times about how the federal government, Homeland Security, had sent out critical updates to all the power companies saying that they are very concerned about an internet attack on the power grids. This is not a hypothetical. We're much more likely to experience a cyber attack than a nuclear attack or tanks coming down the streets. It's a whole lot easier for somebody hacker in Iran or China or North Korea to come in and knock out TVA through the internet than for them to launch a nuclear strike or have planes fly over dropping bombs or whatever. So this is probably the most likely scenario for us to have a serious attack on the internet, on the United States, and it could very well knock out the internet, which means that something like Winlink is an important backup. Now, what if the entire internet's knocked out? Now, that's never happened, unlikely, but what if it is? What if all the internet worldwide has gone down? Well, the first thing is, I'd suggest get your guns and food and head for a cave, because it's going to be bad if the internet's completely out, because we depend on so much stuff these days, power and gasoline, credit cards, and all sorts of stuff. But Winlink has a mode of operation we call the radio-only or hybrid network, where it doesn't use CMSs or internet at all. It does everything by HF communication. And in that case, what it does, when you go into an RMS, it uses HF to relay through another RMS to reach a distant RMS. And it automatically calculates the optimum route, does retries, routes around RMSs that are down, does all sorts of fancy stuff to get it there. I have successfully sent messages from Brentwood, radio only, being relayed through RMSs to China, to Russia, to all over Europe, and into Africa. Again, I just sent it into an RMS, addressed to someone or a station in, let's say, China, and it was relayed automatically from one RMS to another RMS to another RMS till it finally got to China. All by radio, no internet at all.
How long did it take?
I took more than a day to get there all the way to China, because it's a long way. Now, the federal people, the sheriff's people, exercise this literally every day. Every day they send a message, radio-only message to all their stations, but they're all in the United States. And that takes less than an hour to get it, usually minutes. I mean, usually within 15 minutes, anywhere in the United States, on the sheriff's network. So, and the final mode is peer-to-peer, and that's very simple. That's where you, with your radio and antenna, make a direct radio connection to another person with their radio antenna without going through the Winlink system at all. It's just peer-to-peer. Just, Tim and I, or Scott and I, or whatever, could in town make peer-to-peer connections and exchange messages directly.
So that's one of the options in the software.
Yeah, well, the options. So we got lots of, and there are other modes as well. It can actually go through satellite phones. It can go through mesh networks, which I'll talk about in a second. There are all sorts of modes of communication. Yeah.
How do you know who you can get?
For peer-to-peer, you're going to have to coordinate it. Now, you're gonna have to both be on the air at the same time, because, and you're gonna have to agree on a frequency. You're gonna have to say, well, let's use, it's just like if you and I were talking on the radio, simplex,
Yeah.
we have to agree on the HF simplex, we'd have to agree on the frequency, and
And we both have to have the necessary software to
yeah,
send
that's
it.
right. So peer-to-peer requires coordination.
Just like a normal.
It could be, like, I suppose you were in a shelter, Red Cross shelter, and you needed to have heavy traffic going back to Red Cross headquarters. You might go peer-to-peer to avoid putting all the traffic to the Winlink network. You could just go peer-to-peer from the shelter, just agree, we're gonna dedicate a frequency from this shelter to the headquarters and just do peer-to-peer. So, conclusion. So Winlink continues to grow in use. It's used a lot for emergency communication and also for people in remote locations. The Winlink development team is working very actively. I'm one of the developers and I work on it every day. And we've got the new mode of the hybrid network, which does it all by radio without any internet for in backup in case the internet's ever attacked. So that's the basic Winlink system. That's a very quick introduction. Let me just run the RMS Express program just to show you what it looks like. And how's our time? Just run not too bad, are we, Tim?
Phil, how do we get this software?
All
And
free.
How much does it expend?
Okay, the good news is it's all free. There's no cost to use Winlink. There's no cost for the software. You just download and use it. It's like a ham radio in general. Let's see. Let me run our message.
One of my favorite Winlink stories, Phil, is that the Bounty,
Yeah.
a sailing ship that was built for a movie, back in the 60s or 70s, was still in use, but during the Sandy, it was off. They waited too long to go out, but the message that saved those people was a Winlink message. They had tried their marine radio, they had tried a satellite phone, they had tried even some other commercial email over radio deal. The message that they sent before they abandoned ship that the Coast Guard received that saved any of them was the Winlink.
Yeah. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of stories of sailors that have been saved by sending Winlink messages, broken mast or whatever. And as I said, it's used by tens of thousands of sailors. This is the main screen of the RMS Express program.
We don't have anything up here.
Oh, you don't? Oh, let's see here. What happened? No input signal. What happened? Wasn't coming out here.
Maybe we'll just do this one more time.
Okay. So now I got out. Oh, here it is. Now I got to get back to the. Let's see. What did I do to get back into there? I think I did this and duplicate. Come on, where's my cursor?
It's on the other screen.
Ah, here it is. Duplicate.
Say again.
Oh, there you go. There you
Okay,
go.
good.
And move over this way just a little bit.
Yes, I'm like, sure.
Laptop over this way.
Let's see. I need to go. How's that?
It's good. Because of my keyboard.
Yeah, it's got it. Okay, this is the main screen of the RMS Express program. As I said, it's a lot like many email programs. It's got, inbox where received messages are held that come in. It's got message for read messages, outbox, and sent items. I've got a lot of stuff in my sent items, record of all the messages I've sent. Now let's compose a quick message here. I'll say new message, and I'll send it to Scott. So I'll say to KD4BBC, but I can also send messages to conventional email addresses. I'll send one to myself. That's my regular internet email address. So it doesn't have to be another ham. It could be anybody. You can send it to your mother, your father, your brother, your friend, whatever. And I'll say test message. And then I'll say this is a test.
Question here, Phil. When you said KD4BBC, is that implied at Winlink?
Yes.
Okay.
If I just put a call sign, that implies he's going to receive it through Winlink. That's a message to a ham through the Winlink system. If I want to send it, otherwise I'd use a conventional email address like this. Can be, you can send it to Yahoo, Gmail, any email address is fine. So I've composed it. Now up here, post the outbox. I'm going to post it to the outbox. And if I look in the outbox, I see I've got one message sitting there. The mailbox has a flag up, it's waiting to go. There's the subject of it and who it's going to and so forth. Now, I'm going to actually send this using a telnet connection, but before I do that, well, let's do that first. Since we don't have a radio connected, I can't send it by radio, so I'm going to say a telnet, which means a direct internet connection to a CMS. So this is kind of cheating because this is not really radio, but it'll get the message out. So I open a telnet session here, and I click start. Oh, I don't have an internet connection. Well, I can't do that either. I won't do that right now. I'm not on the internet with this computer. If I had an internet connection, I could send it up. I'll try to get a connection and show it to you in a minute. Well, let's see. Hold on. If I just turn off Wi-Fi. Let's see here. Available. Let's see if I can get connected here. Public. I think I'm using public. Oh, shoot. Let's see here. What's the password? I've got it.
I'll give you a hotspot.
127.
What is it?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It doesn't have any letters in it.
It's really secure.
Really high security. I don't think that's it. I think it's something else.
Well, 13 digits, a little bit more secure.
Well, let's not, I'll work on that in a minute. Let me show you the channel list here.
Cliff's gonna give you a hotspot here, just.
Okay. I'll show you the channel list while he's working on that. Now, it's gonna complain because I don't have a radio connected, so I gotta say, yeah, I understand all that. Because it's upset because there's no radio connected. Now, channel selection, we'll say no. Here's a list of channels sorted by, over here in the rightmost column, path quality. So it suggests using KC0 TPS on 7104. And then you can go down the list here, and you can see as we go down, the path quality estimate goes from a high of 51 down as we continue down. All of the ones in green are generally going to be good. When we get down to the yellows, that means, yeah, you may make it, but it's getting a little weaker. And when we get down into the reds here, that means your chances are slim to none. Go down to the bottom of the list. Oh, let's see, ZS, that's South Africa. Yeah, I'd say we're going to have a hard time connecting to an RMS in South Africa. Some of the others, I think 4F, I think it may be Israel. What's 4F? Is that Israel?
I think it's Israel.
Yeah. And some of the other things.
Bravo Delta 4 is China.
Yeah, Bravo Delta 4 OS, that's China. So our chances of connecting here to China directly are not high. So we probably wouldn't want to try that one.
Interestingly, XE2 is Mexico, but on 80 meters right now.
Yeah,
it's not very
it may
good.
be good on some other frequencies. So, and here's V, that's India. All the VU stations are all in India, and they're not good. But up the
So
top, you
how do
see.
they know that you're gonna have good connection?
Yeah, it's a computer model. It's a computer program. It's based on the frequency, the time of day, the solar flux index makes a calculation. It was actually developed for Voice of America.
Okay.
It's not 100%.
So it picks up a signal?
No. It's all
algorithm?
this is all computer predictions.
Got it.
Nothing to do with real life. It's all based on a computer model of what it thinks would probably be good. As I said, most of the time, the top 10 you're going to get something in the top 10.
You good to go?
Yeah, you got a hotspot now.
Okay, I've got a hotspot now. So let me close. So basically, all you'd have to do is double click one of these lines to choose that station and that frequency. That's all you got to do. Let me see if I can get on the Wi-Fi here.
Should see a router. It's a Galaxy Note 5.
Yeah, okay. Available. What's available? Here it is.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it to you phonetically. Lowercase, Zulu, Bravo, Quebec, Juliet, 0615.
I think we're connected. Okay, now if we are connected through, we are doing radio.
That's true.
Yeah.
Save it radio.
So now I'll go back to a telnet type Winlink connection, open the session, and see if that works. Start. Connecting to a CMS, okay. We happen to connect, see where it says connected to San Diego up here? By random chance, we got San Diego this time, and then I won't go through all the details, but here it was sending my message, sent one message right there, so it went out. And then, in fact, I had 2 messages pending to come in and received 2 messages. And at the bottom here, I've got a summary. You see that sent 1 message and received 2 messages. So I just went through a cycle of sending that messages out to the San Diego CMS and then receiving 2 messages back in. If I click start again, it'll click to a different CMS probably. Yeah, this time Halifax, Nova Scotia. And if I do it again, see, as soon as it disconnects, now do it again, we'll connect this time to Brentwood. So you see it's cycling around through the CMSs. But again, it doesn't matter which CMS I use because it's going to be automatically synchronized with all the other CMSs. If I do it again, I'm probably going to be somewhere out of the country. Yeah, line Austria. And let's see. Let's see here, do it again, and we go to Perth, Australia.
So you hit all 5.
Yeah, so we're down in Australia now, CMS.
Is it any faster if you want to send to Australia to try to
No,
get?
not at all.
Okay.
It doesn't make a difference.
It's just do it and it's gonna get there.
It's going to get there within a minute. All of them are going to have it within a minute, so it doesn't make any difference.
Where do you get RMS Express?
Go to winlink.org, winlink.org, and there's a download. You download RMS Express, install it, it's free. And you can, even if you don't have a radio, even if you don't have if you've got any ham radio license, you can use it in telnet mode. If you've got a ham radio like call sign and an internet connection, you can use telnet to get started and learn how to do what I just did. You can compose messages, send messages, receive messages using RMS Express. And then as you got a radio, you can plug the radio in and start doing it via HF.
If your radio has a computer attached to it, it's automatic.
If it's got a sound, you need to have a sound card. If the radio has a sound card built in, then you're good. If you don't, you need a Winlink. Or not Winlink, I'm sorry, yes, a signaling sound card.
Okay.
So you might want to mention the sign-up process.
Well, it's very simple. The sign-up, all you have to do,
All of mine are.
when you configure RMS Express, it's going to prompt you for everything. You're going to configure for call sign and password. It's going to register you automatically. So you don't have, there's no money. It's a very simple process. It's all automatic.
And it's use it or lose it, right?
Your use is good for
A year.
more than a year. I think maybe 2 years. We don't pull the plug very often.